outer, just going within to be. Continue to breathe. Find that normal rhythm for your breath and relax. Inhale through your nose and then just blow it out through your mouth a couple times just to fully be. Now as we relax the body, we release the thoughts in our mind. We don't try to eliminate these thoughts. That's what the mind does. But we can sit for a few moments and not attach to these thoughts that drift by. How many thoughts drift by your mind in just a matter of a few moments? So you can let the thoughts come and go. You can do that. Just let them come and go. And if you get attached to one as they drift by, just return to the breath. Focus on your breath. The practice of meditation is just that, practice. We practice this letting go of these thoughts that drift through our mind. We need the mind to function in this manifest world, and we need the thoughts, and yet we also need to go within to this other realm of our being. That's what meditation allows us to do. Breathe. Hold in your awareness, in your consciousness, in your being, these three words. You are that. You are that. Everything is a manifestation of God. By whatever name you choose to call this presence, whatever name you want to call it, everything is a manifestation of God. Everything. That means you. That means you. You are that. You are that. To know God is to know yourself. To know God is to know yourself. To know yourself is to know God. So this quality of knowing that I mentioned here is not, it isn't knowledge. It's an intuitive something other than yourself. It's an intuitive part of who you are. You cannot be other than God. You cannot be separate from God. We talk about oneness every week. You are one with the ground of being. You're one with your breath. You're one with the universe. There can be no other truth. You are that. Continue to take that deeper and deeper into your consciousness and into the truth of who you are. Find that intuitive spot where you know everything is a manifestation of God. That means you. You are that. So this knowing God isn't necessarily through theological speculations about God, whether God is alive or dead, as we tend to do and have so many discussions about. This is a direct knowing from within you that you are that. When you know God directly, the way a ray of sun, the way the ray of sun knows the sunlight, you know God. You are that. But, and this is a huge but, You do not imagine you are alone with God. You do not imagine that. For just as soon as you realize that you are one with God, you see that everything is a manifestation. Everything and everyone is also a manifestation of this one. You are that. You are that. Hold this in the silence, in your awareness, for just a couple moments. In the silence. Now I invite you to take a deep breath in and feel that presence that you've touched, that inner being, that inner self that you've touched, your true self that you've touched in this couple of moments of meditation, of silence. And as you return to this room, in this physical place, or wherever you're listening to this meditation, know that you take this with you, this awareness. Again, it's not a knowledge that you get from a textbook. It's a direct experience that you've had with the divine in you. Take a deep breath in and exhale, and then begin to wiggle your fingers and toes. And then you can roll your shoulders. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes and be fully present with us now. So, when we meditate, we think that it has to be ultimate quiet. There can be no disturbances, no noise on the road or wherever, or from our kids, which I love having Zoe here. I mean, and if you watch the Buddhist, and I've been in several Buddhist meditation teachings, they play the music, they play the bells and the gongs, and it's actually very noisy when they meditate. It keeps their mind. They hold their distractions, and when we ring the singing bowl, it's a reminder to breathe. The Buddhist tradition is to breathe. So anytime you hear that during meditation, so meditation, at times you probably want it to be silent. Other times you bring what is to the silence. So you take that into the silence. So, hi Zoe, thank you for being here. Yeah. Finding yourself in transition. So this is the 5th week. We've talked about paradox of change. We've talked about endings, the void. Last week we focused on new beginnings. We had a great discussion after the talk as well as Sunday. So this is a new, but we're going to continue some of this throughout the year, because I think this is a piece, as we know this about ourselves, the way endings and the void and new beginnings work. It's a touch of the mystics. It's the mystic that we are. Melissa's going to do a class on that. I've got a series that's coming up that's going to be on having a mystical experience of God. That meditation that we just did is what that is. It's not from a book. You don't find that in a book. You experience it. We meditate so that we can have a direct experience. And that's what mysticism is. This book is about this that we've been studying is about mysticism. You might not know that, but you're a mystic. We study that each of us, we're mystics in the way that we know that we can have a direct experience of the divine. We don't have to, somebody doesn't have to do it for us. Matter of fact, they can't. We can know it ourselves. And as we have these experiences of the divine and touch God directly, we become mystics. And Melissa's going to talk about that from Richard Rohr's perspective too, who I love. You've heard me talk about him a lot, about what the mystics know. Robert Brummett says, gives a quote in the book from Henry David Thoreau. I learned that if one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours. So now we're in the new beginning. We're at the end of the book, toward the end of the book. So all of our questions about new beginnings have been answered, right? Do you see the why? Why did this happen? The why of the ending, the why of the void. Why did you have to stay in the void? You got it all answered now, right? So the plan unfolds. We're not done yet. So I've used this in classes. I've taken quite a few classes with Robert Brummett. I'll tell you about this one I'm going to share about that. This has been a while ago at UNG Village, except in a separate class, we haven't talked about some of what he talks about at the last of the book. He says the plan unfolds, but wait just a minute. What's the plan? Can you see the plan? You see parts of it maybe. Even in new beginnings, we get angry and frustrated and may shout out, "What's the plan? I have to know the plan." Right? You ever do that? I have to know. Does it still happen to you occasionally? Do you know? What's the plan? The plan is unfolding. Brummett says, in this world, all things change. Even the new beginnings change. Although change sometimes appears random and chaotic, not one thing in our life occurs without purpose, albeit the underlying purpose is rarely evident at first. Very often, it's only in retrospect, after the passage of time, sometimes a long time, that the healing of our pain, that we begin to perceive a purpose beyond our life transition. So if you can imagine, for just a moment, a caterpillar crawling around on a large oriental rug. That caterpillar sees only bits of color, inches, fractions of an inch at a time. Endless series of colors. Can't even see the patterns, probably. Yet a butterfly, that used to be a caterpillar, flying over can start to see the patterns, the network of patterns and the beauty of the whole rug, whole carpet. Indeed, there's a pattern, a plan for each of us. Although most of us are like the caterpillar all too often, aren't we? Because we're crawling around on the carpet and we can't see the whole picture. This is a perfect metaphor for our lives. We crawl around on the carpet of our lives and can only see minimal colors, very little change. We can see very little events of our lives, very little situations. Yet if we move to 5,000 feet, now the butterfly wasn't at 5,000 feet, but in this image, I want you to think about this. I always call it getting to 5,000 feet. Can you see more of the tapestry of your life? Yeah, we can see it. We're not just so focused on the little bitty minutia. But if we stay in the small, quote small, the without, living from without, evolution in consciousness still happens around us, not through us. Brummett talks about our DNA in the book, this book, The Plan Unfolds. Within the nucleus of each cell in our bodies exists DNA, a DNA molecule which directs the destiny of that cell. Likewise, within each of our souls, there's a divine plan that guides the soul's evolution. Yes, we are evolving. Without the collective soul of humanity, a divine plan is at work. Within the collective soul of humanity, a divine plan is working the path of our evolution. So you might say, evolution? What are you talking about? How do we get from new beginnings to evolution? Is that the plan? Is that the plan of the new beginning in our lives? Is that the plan for every new beginning in our lives? Evolution. I invite you to look at this answer to that question. Are you ready for the answer? The answer is yes. Yes. Every new beginning, everything that we experience, the experience of our lives, it's all about evolution. Evolution in consciousness. So I was fortunate to take a class with Robert Brummett several years ago, and he talks. The part of the class was called Soul Evolution, and he referred a Jesuit priest by the name of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He was born in 1881, died in 1955. Relatively current, a Jesuit priest. He was a scientist, he was a theologian, asserted that the work of Christ is primarily to lead the material world to cosmic redemption, where the quest of evil is only a secondary to that purpose. Now, throughout the 40s and 50s, the Catholic Church was on the verge of excommunicating Teilhard de Chardin. Today, we know his truth and his teachings have been validated by science. The evolution of consciousness is the driving force behind all physical evolution. So Brummett gives this quote about Chardin. The purpose of physical evolution of the universe is to serve as a vehicle of consciousness to develop. So we say, are we evolving spiritually? Can you see it? We say we are spiritual beings having a human or a physical experience because our consciousness has evolved to allow us to say that and to see that. We wouldn't be able to say that. I don't know who came up with that first. I've read that from a lot of teachers. We wouldn't see that if we weren't evolving in consciousness. Can you see it in your own life? I have seen this in myself. I frequently call it a paradigm shift. I love the word paradigm shift, so I frequently see that all the time. A new way of seeing the world. And guess what? I've seen it in you. Many of you have seen it. The paradigm shift, the evolution in consciousness. The evolution of consciousness occurs in stages, just like the physical evolution. There's a pattern of increasing complexity in our evolution. Once the complexity gets to a point, there's a threshold is reached, evolution will make quantum leap into a new level of consciousness. There's many things in our culture today where you can see that. So I believe we're making these quantum leaps in consciousness, individually and collectively. That's why we're here to do. Have you noticed the language of these quantum leaps that occurs in our lives? We say internal change before the external change. The new beginnings, that's what Brummett has been telling us about. The internal change must come hopefully before the external change. Doesn't always, but so that's a quantum leap. To think that the internal change, we're living from within out, not the other way around. Or living from within out. That's what that means. We're living from within out. The Christ in me honors the Christ in you. I see the Christ in you. The universal Christ is another evidence and teaching that we are evolving in consciousness. There's so much more. The cosmic Christ is another term that we use for this. And we also say, be the love you want to see in the world. Love is the answer. No matter what the question, love is the answer. That wouldn't happen to us on an intellectual level. We can't really fully embrace that on an intellectual level. So the primal substances that evolved into atoms, then and inorganic molecules, complex organic molecules, molecules, and then a quantum leap, life. Life was born. So one of the concepts of this whole evolution is entropy. You ever heard the term entropy? Entropy is a property of the second. It's explained in the second law of thermodynamics. It predicts the whole universe and every other system, every other process is moving slowly toward an inevitable death, what's called maximum entropy. Now, this is the science embracing this thing we call conscious evolution. Entropy is the quantum force that constantly fights against the rise of complexity consciousness. So after billions and billions of years, there's been another quantum leap. Thought was born. So we, as human beings, are an integral part of the evolution on this planet, of spiritual evolution. Thought was born. Just think about that a minute. Thought evolved from a primate man, if you will, mankind, with simple thoughts, to genius of Shakespeare, Mozart, you could rattle, Einstein, many, many others, David Hawkins this day, many of the spiritual teachers. It's evolved. That's where our thought has evolved into. So, new beginnings, what's the next step? What's the next stage? If evolution, spiritual evolution is happening in stages, what's the next stage? The next stage, according to many of the spiritual teachers today and scientists, is beyond thought. Beyond thought. So the future is unknown. We can only guess about it. We get some evidence about it in our lives. And if we did know, we could not describe it, because a language is a product of thought. Our language is a product of thought. The best we can do is point to it, point at it. With language, we cannot explain it, but it cannot comprehend it. Charles Fillmore talks. It's amazing how Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, talks about this in Atom-Smashing Power of Mind. So in this class I had with Robert Brummett, the two textbooks were Charles Fillmore and Teilhard de Chardin, combining this and embracing this evolution in consciousness toward awakening. So if the new evolution that's going on, spiritual evolution, and many of you I know, like me, have written this on your Whitestone. Awake. It's an awakening. So we're in awakening. So how do we describe it? Again, we can't use the words necessarily sometimes to describe it. There's a Zen saying, the finger that points to the moon is not the moon. The finger that points to the moon is not the moon. That comes from an old Zen saying. So we look to enlightened beings to help us see this next level, this awakening. There was once a man said to Buddha, said, "Sir, are you God?" Ran into the Buddha. He said, "Sir, are you God?" The Buddha replied, "No." Then are you a man? Are you a man? The Buddha said, "No." Well, then what are you? The Buddha replied, "I am awake. I am awake." 500 years later, Jesus demonstrated he was awake in preaching his radical message, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So maybe this next stage of awakening or entering the kingdom of heaven, how do we get there? So my endings and periods of my life of being in the void and new beginnings have led me to the life I am today, of what I am today. I am so blessed and so humble and honored at all stages of my life to be able to see that. Don't we say, I wouldn't change a thing about my life, for it has led me to this point of evolution in my own consciousness. Step by step, day by day, the plan unfolds before our very eyes. No one can take this path for you. We can walk the path together. We can walk beside each other, but nobody can do it for you. You have to walk the path yourself. So sometimes I'll tell you about how many books I have in my office, and I've got a little plaque that says, if it's books, it's not hoarding. So that's a mantra I keep telling myself. My wife doesn't buy it, but that's what I keep saying. But I wonder why we have so many books. Why do we keep reading these books about the spiritual consciousness, evolution of spiritual consciousness? There's always something that we can learn from new people, new authors, from each other about our evolution. So we are so enmeshed in thought, it's no wonder we seek these multiple teachers and guide on this road. Very little may have changed externally, but internally we're not living in the same world with new beginnings and going through the void. Our external experiences or circumstances are not the same, but when we are experiencing them, we see them in a totally different way. When we surrender to the process of change, we discover what never changes. You and I are expressions of God, just as we talked about in the meditation. You are that. And each step along the way is guided by God. Step by step, day by day, the plan unfolds. The path we must take is the path we are on. To surrender fully is to be open in a deep way to each experience of our life, to allow ourselves to feel responsive to the events and circumstances. It means to be oneself, to live in the moment. We talk about being mindful. That's the practice that we strive to do. So surrender, so beyond change is to surrender to the process of change. Surrender to the process of change. And when we do that, we discover what never changes. It's the reality of our own being, the depth of a changeless reality beneath and beyond the world. Rose and I quote this all the time: be of the world but not in it, be in the world but not of it. So there's an endless reality, a changeless reality of being in the world but not of it. Whatever this movement is called, we meet life's moment by moment. Brummett says, here's what he says at the end of the book: we begin to see everything in our life, in the universe, as part of a great cosmic dance, the dance of our life, evolving, unfolding, expressing. And within this dance is this still point, where past and future are gathered. At this point, eternity exists within each passing moment. Infinity exists within each dancing atom. The changeless exists in the heart of change itself. That's very powerful. The changeless exists in the heart of change itself. We are both the dancer and the dance, the seeker and the sought, the knower and the known. What we have been looking for is that which is looking. We have come home to ourself, self with a big S. But that is not the end. It is only the beginning, for the dance goes on. This is the plan, my friends. This is the plan. This is my plan. This is your plan. Namaste.
Thank you, Ron. And thank you, Rose. And thank you, Tim and Rosalita. Oh, thank you. All right, so we're ready to end our service. And as usual, we form a circle and we sing the peace song together. After the peace song, we'll sing our prayer for protection. there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. With God as creator, family all are we. Let us